For those of you who are online, I just want to thank you for joining us today. I'm setting up all my control mechanisms on this because webinars is a new sort of venture for both myself as well as a number of people in this space. And so we're trying to learn the Zoom technology. We shifted from just doing meetings to actually go into more of a webinar format. And so what I'm excited about is an opportunity to be able to play with you guys and be able to talk about something that's really important, which is making a shift from being in a corporate setting to working in a home office environment. And first time I did this was midway through my career. I made a decision I was going to work by myself, work out of my home for about a year's period of time. And I have to tell you, it did not go real well for a lot of reasons. And we're going to talk about some of those as we go through this period of time. And it was just on my heart to spend time to help us look at this subject matter as people are shifting from going from an environment where they are working in a corporate setting to something where you're working by yourself independently for the first time. And it's a different type of arrangement. And it's a different type of scenario to go from. So here's what I'd like to do. I'm going to launch a poll real quick while we get started. I'm going to try this as something. It's my first time doing this, so if you'll bear with me. And the poll I'm launching here, you should see on your screens if I've done this properly. Shanalee, can you see the poll on your screen?
Sure can.
Super. There's a poll that we have in place. I'd like to see from an attendee standpoint, what's your home office like? Is it just you? Is it you and a spouse? Is it a single parent with kids? Is it your spouse and kids? I'd also had a fifth line down there. One is that I'm working from home and my dogs are driving me crazy. But I couldn't figure out how to separate those results. I'm gonna let that poll run, for a little while we, as we get this thing started. You're gonna hear a voice. You can hear a voice on our call today, and the voice is somebody who I wanted involved with this for a number of different reasons. One is the subject matter we're talking about is I've known Jill Hickman. Jill and I met when I went to a board of directors meeting that I was on, and she came in and did strategic planning. And Jill, I can't track down how long ago that was, about 8 or 9 years ago, maybe a little bit longer than that. And she was the president of the Jill Hickman Companies, which is one of the top organizational development companies in Houston. And her walk has been helping organizations increase their efficiencies. And I was blessed because she reached out to me about 5 years ago to ask me to become an authorized partner with her organization in delivering messages and information that have to do with increasing employee performance from a leadership standpoint, as well as having people interact with each other. And so Jill, you're going to hear her voice. You're not going to see her picture on the pop up on the screen. But Jill, thanks for joining us today.
Oh, thank you for having me, Mike. It's a pleasure. And thank you for the lovely introduction. It's always fun to collaborate with you. So I'm honored and excited for what we're going to share with everyone on the line today. Yeah,
there's another byproduct why I ask you to be on here, Jill, today, is I want you to tell them, Jill, we're not just going to be talking to people about starting up working from home for the very first time. I reached out to one of the top recruiters in Houston, as a matter of fact, in the country, Nicole Self. She works for RWR. Nicole has been a stay-at-home mom who generates $1 million plus in search fees, wins our local awards program here in the recruiting industry year over year, homeschools children with that kind of production. So she's somebody who works from home and has done so for a long time. I contacted her and I said, in preparation for this, I said, Nicole, are there some tidbits that you would share with people? And here's something which is rather interesting. She said, Mike said, the answer would be different today than what I would tell somebody 4 months ago, 3 months ago. Because what we have is, we don't have a new norm. We have a radically different situation. The dynamics of what it takes to work from home today are not your standard, I'm gonna work from home now. And it's really put it in perspective for me what this message needs to be about. And that's another reason why I asked Jill to join in on this, is because Jill You have had a business where you've had a home office for how many years now?
Oh, 22.
Okay, so you've been working out of a home office for 22 years. Would you share with them the shift that took place and how your home office is different today than it was 60 days ago?
Wow, that's a great question. Looking at how it's different, at first we thought, oh, this, it's not going to be too different. 3 weeks ago, that's what I would have said, is that we really entered this thinking, we work from home quite a bit, except when we are out at our client sites. And that's either delivering training or having in-person coaching. So we really didn't think it would dramatically make that big of a difference. But then what also happened was that there was this kind of a triple storm, if you will, that happened as we were getting ready to move some things to a different home, and my daughter and her husband were getting ready to move into their new home. This was a temporary spot for everybody for a couple of weeks. And those couple of weeks happened right when they put Houston into that stay in place order. So when you were asking, Mike, with your poll, what does your work at home office look like and how does it feel compared to 22 years ago and compared to just 2 weeks ago? This 2 weeks is now a 2-family, 3 dogs, and 1 baby on the way. So it has been quite the shift in terms of how do we coordinate this temporary living condition that we thought would be temporary. And even with the stay-at-home order, we thought that would be through April 3rd. It may extend until now we're hearing throughout the summer. So it has definitely been different.
Yeah.
And I will tell you one thing that just to start off kind of funny, because that sounds terrible. But what I will tell you is that my daughter is expecting their second child. Her toddler is not quite 2. And she told me, she said, she and her girlfriends are saying that in 9 months, the parents who are first-time parents didn't have children during this pandemic. They will be first-time parents because anybody in their right mind who already had children would never think that having additional children would be a good idea.
This would not be a good idea. It's going to change things. They're not projecting that the increase in population is going to be similar after World War II when all the military people came home.
Crazy. It's crazy.
It's just
so
crazy.
That's my very long answer, but to put it up into one word, I would say it's a zoo.
Yeah, well, I wanted to thank you. I wanted you to share that because I wanted people to get a context. And when I asked Jill some questions about this, that there's a perspective that she is living with right now that similar to a lot of you. As a matter of fact, I'm going to go through here and I'm going to end the poll. And there should be somebody that says share the results. And so you should be seeing the results on your screen now that shows that based upon the people we have online here, as far as our numbers, we have 15 people that are actually working. You're by yourself. And I tell those of you who are in your home office, just yourself, my heart goes out to you. And there's a lot of what we're going to talk about today it's going to talk to you working as an individual without all the external distractions. Your big challenge that you're going to have is how do you create your own internal energy when you are asked to stay in this box with limited interaction with other people, not only on a daytime basis, but even socially. And then we have about 11 that are online with yourself and your spouse. You have 21 that are on spouse and kids. And then we have 5 online that are single parents with kids. So each and every one of you have different situations. And so I'm going to ask Jill later on to talk to us about how do you manage the scheduling? What do you have to do to interact and create an environment that from a productivity standpoint, whenever you're sharing space. I mean, your house just became a co-works place for a lot of you.
Yeah, in fact, my son-in-law said it reminds him when he was in college and he lived with 5 roommates.
Yeah, you know, it's just a different situation. So
It's not as fun, I'm sure.
now a few less keg parties or whatever. So here's here's kind of the instructions we have set up right now. It's the well, Jill and I are going to talk our way through some things, and I've got this scheduled to run roughly until around 12:45ish. We'll stay online a little past that to if there's individual questions and stuff that may come up. What I'm looking at is the so I can over here. Q&A. Sean Lee, I'm going to need to have you back me up on the Q&A part, like the Q&A part of it. If you have questions that pop up, there's a button that you have on here that you can click on to actually type questions in, and Sean Lee is in the background to help us with that. So from a chat standpoint, my chat window is not popping up. Gotta love Zoom on this stuff. So I can't see any type of things that will come on chat wise. So if you see anything, Sean Lee, that through the chat window that you feel like you want to stop me, you may want to collect some things, but we'll make this as interactive as we can. I'm going to stop sharing this over here. So I've got this. So we've looked at our polling question. Let me kind of tell you what our agenda is for the day. We're talking about your home office. We're going to spend some time talking about setting your office up. I'm not talking about auditing office furniture, getting phone systems in, what type of communication tools. I'm assuming right now that all of you have the technologies in place to function, or your businesses are providing those for you. We're going to talk about some other things about how do you set up the office to make sure that whether you're working by yourself or you're working in a co-shared workspace with either children or the other, some little tips of what you can do to maintain productivity. We're going to talk about what the importance of schedule is for driving your business. We're going to talk about not communication, about what do we mean by over communicate, the importance of managing yourself physically through this period of time, as well as mental focus. This discussion is not designed for somebody who's going to go and set up their own home office to be sort of in their own business. It's for an interim period of time. We're in a transition period right now. We're in a situation where what we're struggling for is not a new normal. Then this is not going to be what is going to be normal for the rest of our careers. We have a tendency to think what is called linear thinking. The way things are today, as Jill said, we don't know if it's going to be through the end of April, if it's going to go into May. We're not sure how long this type of environment is going to be in. But it's important for us to focus on what's the new reality of today. For those of you who are on the webinar I had on Monday, the virtual event we cast there, I think this is so important for us to look at is that today, in today's time, what we're focusing on is what I refer to as a 24-hour reality, because things change and shift. And if we try to guess where we're going to be, it has a tendency to slow ourselves down. And there's a reality, here's a reality what we're dealing with. The reality is at this point in time, to those of you who are working by yourself, you're gonna have more of a sense of aloneness no matter how much you feel connected. That's your reality, and you have to own that. And you're gonna have to take steps every day to deal with that, to be even more overt in how you reach out to people. I think it's critical that we look at this. And if you're looking at this slide, Jill, you haven't seen, there's a slide that I'm putting up, but it's referred to as capitulation. It's something that I got from Alejo Villanos, who is a high net worth money manager for Merrill Lynch. And he was explaining to me that when you look at market conditions and shifts, it's something called capitulation. It's when you look at the event that's causing something to happen, like ours is COVID-19. You see that in real time. We know COVID-19 has started spanking us beginning February, March, and we can definitely see it right now. At some point, and then we go through this down curve, the event causes a downward slide and pressure into the marketplace. Well, at some point in time, there's a recovery that is going to happen. And our great challenge is that we don't know when that recovery is. And so what happens is while we're in the middle of this downslide, as things are going, so for some people feel like it's cascading down, we're in this space, and what we're trying to do in this space is we're trying to go look backwards to a point where we're looking at, well, gosh, it's not like it used to be. And then the other focus we run into is, when is it going to get better? And in today's time, the reality that we've got to focus on is, where are we today, right now? What are we dealing with at this point in time? And what we're dealing with today is something that impacts us in two different ways. And Jill, I know you're going to know what this slide is, even though you're not able to see this. What I have up here is called the critical elements of communication. And in all situations in our business life, there's a human side of the business, and there's the business side of interacting with people. There's the human side and the business side. And what takes place is that what our jobs are is to learn, how do we navigate between the human side and the business side? That's what we're fighting with. We have to learn how to navigate, how to surf from one side to the other. And what I'm finding is, in a normal circumstances, we have a chance to sort of process things kind of sometimes slowly. We have sometimes clearer windows to deal with. But in today's side, I think this is something that's putting more pressure on not just the leaders, but the people working in the rank and the file, whether recruiters or salespeople or people in support roles, is to be able to deal with things today and know, how do I navigate from a business side of, I've got to keep things going forward. But at the same time, there's a real human element that we deal with that has to do with the emotional response to everything that comes back. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, that's a really good point. And in normal situations, it's always important, no matter who you're talking with, or if you're sending an email or you're, sending a text, it's always good to start off on that human side, just to say, hey, it's Jill calling, it's Jill texting, this is Jill. It's always nice to start off personable. But in this day and age where we are right now in the middle of this pandemic, it is more critical than ever. And it's a leader's responsibility to start off meetings or to reach out to employees and ask how they're doing. But I would also say it's each employee's responsibility to reach out to their leader. We're all navigating in different territory here. And so reaching out to your manager is just as important. But in your team meetings, and even saying, hey, can we stop for just a minute, asking your manager in advance, can we ask at the very beginning, how is everybody doing? Just a reminder to that leader how important it is to reinforce that element of communication, of checking in on everybody and giving everybody the space and time to talk about what's happening, whether it's with their family, with themselves, with their ability to get business done. And for those who are single parents with children at home, you are in a tough spot. And letting your manager know what you need is critical. But reaching out and asking for permission and time and space as a reminder, and also how important that will be for everybody. Your leader will appreciate it.
Yeah, very much so. As we get toward the latter parts of our presentation, we're actually going to talk about the importance of managing up, which is what Jill's talking about here. When I was walking through Suite 100, which is what I call my first floor of my house, my second floor is Suite 200. When I was walking through Suite 100, my wife was referring to Brene Brown, who was being interviewed. And she was talking, Jill, about the importance of, in today's time, is that if there's an angst that you're dealing with about working in your home office setting, if there's an angst, instead of pushing that angst down saying it doesn't exist, I will get past this, is to recognize and saying, this is what the angst is, and to bring it up and make it a reality, because it's not the same. You're not just moving from your normal business office and just transposing it into a new facility. You haven't relocated your business. You're trying to set it up in a different format. And I think that was one of my learning processes, but to try to figure out, I have now taken my company office and I've now made my home my office. And that transition is not an easy thing to go through to go through emotionally, is it?
No, and everybody's situation is different.
Totally.
And that's what we need to be really mindful of.
Yeah. So let's talk about office setup here. Now, when I'm talking about office setup, I'm not talking about dimensions. I'm not talking about running down to or having I can't run down to IKEA anymore, but have IKEA deliver or do a drive up and do a pickup. I think there's some little tips that I've come up with, and Jill, you can think of maybe some things that you did to help yourself with having the home office. The first thing is that here's my recommendation: is if you don't have this already, get some flip chart paper or make something out of just blank papers and put it up on the wall. But if you have the resources to get Amazon to deliver a pad, a flip chart, the sticky kind of stuff, is get that and have a whiteboard in your home office. And here's the purpose of what the flip chart paper becomes. It's a thing for you to do if there are certain goals or activity things that you should be shooting for, things to do today, is that if you put it to where you can see it in front of you, if you can put it up to where you have the ability to see what you're working on, it's totally different than just having something that's on a page. It becomes more real whenever you make it larger. And it's one of the things that I actually have I have a flip chart page. I've got I believe it so strongly. I have a 4x6 whiteboard that sits in front of me. And then I even bought a little 2x3 that sits on an easel. So I can have different things for me to be looking at and be able to erase and write to help me to be able to sort of chronicle what it is that I'm looking at. I think the visual part of it through this transition period or whatever, anything you can do like that to help you focus on the things that are your highest priority is a key aspect of what you need to be doing. The second thing is this. There's two things for you to be able to look at from an office setup. If you're blessed and you have your own office space, your own room to work in, you don't really need painter's tape. But if you don't, my suggestion is if you have a place that you've made your workspace, is that you go and you sort of take some painter's tape, or if you have the ability to use some type of a masking tape or draw something on the floor that when you step across that line, I'm in that office. And the reason for that is twofold. Is if I'm working by myself, it helps me to know that I'm stepping into my office, I'm stepping into work. If I'm working in a place where I've got children, it has the ability to help them to recognize that when I go over here, I'm going to be working. And it has an ability to kind of set this up in a little bit of a different process. Okay, Jill, you giggled about that, especially the first time you and I talked about that. What are your thoughts?
I love that. And, setting that up is so important visually, and it's important for your family. Small children know I love that example. When you step in, that's mommy or daddy's space. When you step out, they know you're up for grabs. But it's also a good closure for you when you leave for the day. When you say, okay, this is my break time, I'm stepping away, and don't sit and eat. If you are using your dining room table as your desk, as your office, don't eat there. Really take a break away. Make that your workspace for whatever time it is during the day, but leave it for lunch. Go somewhere else. Go outside if it's a pretty day. Just so that you have that break time from your desk. When you walk away, that's it. And everybody else knows that's it.
Yeah, it's huge. It's a lot of what we're going to be talking about in this area has to do with sort of, it's not mind games, but how do you take a mental approach to being successful at this? I called a friend of mine, Francis Schwarzenberg. Francis and I started running together when we were freshmen in high school, and I'm not going to tell you how many years ago. It was going to be measured in decades. But I called him and I said, Francis, what advice do you have for people who are working from home? Because the reason why is Francis was one of the top salespeople for GlaxoSmithKline Beecham, which is a pharmaceutical company, was one of the top salespeople in the entire United States. And he always worked from home. And he also mentored people. And when I asked him, he said, I've got one thing. He said, don't work in your bed. I said, what do you mean by that? He said, I walked into somebody's home to see their home office. He was mentoring it. And we walked in and she had all of her stuff spread on her bed. And that's where she was making her phone calls from and doing her things. He said, the thing to do is to either go set up at a table in the kitchen, get an end table and make that your space, but it's not to set up in the bed. If your couch is your workspace and that's all that you have. As Jill said, if that's what you have said, don't call it your couch from this point forward. Call that your office. And I'm going to that's my office. I'm worried because what's happening is, again, we're not talking about this is how you're going to live the rest of your life. But in this place and this point in time, I think if we put this thing through this period, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to work strongly on being able to say, this is my office. You also want to set up a sort of expectations of not just yourself, of others. And this is a little bitty thing, but Jill, when you set your office up the very first time, you had to train other people since you were at home and you were by yourself and so tell me about the notes and stuff you put on the door.
Yeah, well, I live in a great neighborhood with wonderful neighbors. And when they realized that I was working from home, they thought, how wonderful, we can just drop over, knock on the door, have a cup of coffee. And I realized that that was not going to be conducive to a productive workday. So I created a sign that said, at work, on conference call, will be available at, and I'd fill it in. Or I got to the point where I just left it up there without a time, and then I would take it down whenever I was available. And in fact, it worked really well. So well that they quit coming over during the day at all. And one of my neighbors, I actually saw, we were talking out on the driveway with that 6 feet of social distancing. And we were talking about, she goes, this reminds me when you first worked from home, because I'd come outside and take a break. I always loved to play in my yard. And she goes, this reminds me of when you first came in. And I said, you came to work at home. And I said, I know. I said, and, I had to really schedule my time. And I said, I'm happy to do that now. And she goes, yeah, but you don't have the sign on the door anymore. And I said, but that worked really well, didn't it? And she goes, yeah, it worked really well for me. I never came back over during the day. So we got a chuckle out of it, but it truly does work. But you are not just training yourself, you're training everybody else.
Yeah, that's huge. And there's another person you can train with that. It's not necessarily trained, but what you want to do is you want to limit distractions, and doorbells can be distractions when you're working at home.
Right.
And so if you are at work, and to stop your Amazon deliveries or FedEx deliveries, because we're asking deliveries to be made now. Amazon's been delivering on my doorstep for a long time. But it's what I have to learn to do is that whenever I have had meetings and situations like this that I just don't want distractions, would put a sign outside my door saying, I used to just say, sign up that said baby sleeping, and it would freak everybody out and they wouldn't ring the doorbell, which is what I was after.
Right.
You're trying to set up a situation that this is having an effect on 2 people. One is a person that might come up to the door to interact with you, but the second is, it affects you. You're stepping in a space where going, this is my work, this is my place, this is what I'm going to do. And if you do the same thing and you start communicating with your kids in the same way, especially for those who have either smaller kids and you can do this all the way up until to teenagers, is to set up family and office hours and let them, this is office hours. And one of the ways to make a game out of this is get them involved with it. And Jill, you don't see the slide, but what I have, it's a stick figure with that literally just stick figure drawings of people, is to have your youth, your children, no matter what the age, to draw a picture of what does it look like when mommy or daddy are at work, and have them draw the picture up. And then when you go to the office, you get a chance to say, okay, the picture draw me, I'm at work now. So while I'm doing this, and then you can have them go elsewhere. Or if it's their children are old enough to understand. I was talking to a client of mine in Colorado, and who has an amazing teenager, Megan, who comes in, and she has to communicate with Megan and lets Megan know, I'm on a business call right now. Is this time sensitive? Is this time, if it is, I will stop what I'm doing to talk to you. Right. And then I suggested she adds the language and changes it in the future, is blood spurting. But you change, you help them understand and help them get involved. You can use simple things, like little sticky notes that whenever you're in your call time, you're in a time period where you're in sort of your own corporate timeout. is that you can put a flag up, a sticky note. Even if you have your own home office, you have a bedroom you've converted to an office, you take a sticky note and you stick it on the door that lets those around you who might normally come in and interact with you for some reason, that when that sticky note's up there, that mom or dad is not available, husband or wife is not available.
And you know what I love about that, Mike? Your colored sticky notes even can go to a further purpose. You could have a colored deck of sticky notes that was designated for each family member, so that when that color went up, they'd know that message was for them. Mm-hmm. Or maybe one color was designated for everybody. And I love what you're saying about the word. You were talking about establishing routines and about setting expectations. And that's why those are two powerful words. When you have consistently set routines, it's setting those expectations of when you're available. And it becomes a pattern of behavior that your family or whoever is in that office environment can learn to respect.
Yeah, and what Jill's talking about here, as far as having a daily routine, is if people understand what your routine is, then it helps them have the ability to adjust it. But more importantly, if you have your own mental routine, see, what's happened is when you got in your car and you drove downtown to one Shell Plaza to go to work, and you got there was a routine in the office that took place. It was a different feel, a different process that took place. And when you came back home, there was a different routine, but it was a family routine. Well, now what's happened is you wake up, you don't get in your car, you don't drive someplace else. You don't walk to a desk, you don't walk to a coffee room, you don't walk into scheduled meetings, you don't walk into conference rooms. And so what's important is for you to set up your daily routine of what time are you at the office every day. The office just happens to be in your home, and that's dress. I have to believe that for a lot of us, dress is we've been a pretty casual dress environment. It's kind of shifted a little bit to where we've gotten less casual. But I need to talk to you about this for just a second, because this is what I've learned for myself personally. Is worked from home for about 5 years from now, and I can take a pretty casual approach to this. But I will tell you what the mistake that I made the very first time that I set up my office was that I found that the way that I dressed had an impact on how I felt about myself and how it was work from a work standpoint. And the more casual that I got, when I showed up in simply my jogging suit or gym shorts, my head was not in the same place as it was when I put slacks on and a shirt. And I'm not telling you have to dress up for what you do, but I think that you need to look at that. Are you preparing yourself to go to work? Whatever that is for you. Some people, I've got a friend of mine, he can work in flip-flops and just a tank top. Well, I mean, some shorts too. I don't want to create the wrong image here. But I mean, he has real casual stuff. That does not work for me. From a commute standpoint, the time that you used to have to commute and get ready for work, it's not that it's gone away. What's happened is you need to convert that time and be able and think about do you need that time to recharge? In other words, because of the strain that's going on, it's a benefit for yourself to be able to take advantage and maybe sleep in a little bit because of to rebuild. Or are you going to take that amount of time and realize that you've been given the time it took for you to commute, get ready for work, and commute? You literally, for some people, that you've been given another hour and a half in the morning to be more productive than what you had before. That's what we have.
And Mike, that is such a good point, because that hour and a half or hour, whatever that was for commuting to and from work, for some people it's an hour each way or an hour and a half each way, or it used to be. And it really makes you think about, and I heard a comedian say this the other day on TV, and he said, before all this happened with the pandemic and stay-at-home order, I used to hear people saying, oh, if I had time, I'd write a book, or I'd learn a foreign language, or I'd learn to play the piano. He goes, you've got the time now. And he said, when you come out of this, my challenge to you is, what are you going to tell people that you accomplished with this extra time you were given?
Yeah, I love that. And if your answer is, I got to sit on the couch,
Yeah.
wrong answer.
Yeah.
You know, and I think it's a great point you made, Jill, because the question has to do with right now in this state of turmoil that we're trying to wrestle with. It has to do with how are we, you know, taking control of one thing that we can
Exactly.
control, which is our growth. Is there
Right.
something that we can do? How can we, what can we do to develop something? And that's what the problem we're all wrestling with is there's so much that's out of our control right now. This is
Right.
one thing that you can bring into your control to be able to use this time and to be able to think productively about it. The
You
other
know,
part,
Mike, can
Mhm.
I add one thing about dressing?
Yeah.
It's something that we don't think a lot about and how it's easy to get into a pattern of not dressing. I would suggest this, that you never know when you're going to be called to be on a virtual meeting with video. And if you haven't got dressed, or if you look like you haven't shaved in a week or two, then those are things that are very telling and can also be a factor in your lack of credibility or competence. In turn, people still judge what you look like virtually as well as in person. So I would just say, be ready to jump on any call and not have to go, oh my gosh, I got to go run and, you know, get ready for this, because sometimes you won't have that luxury of time to do that.
Yeah, I love that. In other words, right now, if you're working from home, I think it's important each day you get ready to go to work. Because what happens is, one of the things that I made a comment early on about forward-thinking motion, about being the Navy SEALs, because we're running some technology problem. We had to keep pushing on, trying to resolve the situation. You were supposed to see Jill's face as we were doing this. But I really believe that right now.
And I did get dressed.
That's not why she's not on the call. But I really believe that there is a warlike mentality that we have to have right now. That we have to be in attack mode, because there's so much that's being pushed against us that's out of the norm right now. Just going grocery shopping is not just something we can casually think about. We can't. When we think about those that have spouses and children at home at the same time, we're trying to learn how to work together. We have to have a mindset that what can I do to attack my day and attack my day. And so one of the key things we have to look at is the word over communicate. Is that whatever we used to have to do to make where communication was easy, we have to step out and step up. Jill has already mentioned this about from a leadership standpoint, the roles of leaders. We need to be aware of impromptu meetings. Jill, can you share the story you told me about what your daughter and her husband were dealing with whenever he got an invite for like a meeting the next day or something like that?
Oh, it just put all of us into a tailspin, because we are looking at who's going to manage the dogs, who's going to manage the child, and looking at how do you keep all of these things going. It's kind of like you got these spinning plates. And so we have this board, a whiteboard, where we schedule unavailable time. And so we have it all mapped out. Well, if there's a flip to that schedule at the last minute, it throws everybody into this tailspin of trying to juggle what we had already anticipated planning on. And especially, we're looking at how we've got this family, this tribe, if you will, that can help do that. We've got 4 people we can coordinate with. If you're a single parent, I don't know how they don't have the luxury of that.
Mm-hmm.
And so whenever meetings are just thrown up like that, it can really create havoc in your schedule and the stress that it causes.
Mm-hmm.
So it's
very much
those
so.
impromptu meetings in normal situations can create issues for looking at extended daycare if somebody has to come in early or stay late. But when you're dealing with having your children at home and more than one, it just puts everybody into a tailspin, unnecessarily so.
Yeah, and what the image I had when you were telling me about that was that I know Kara had meetings that she already had set up. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
and so these were meetings. That's not even childcare issues, but there's meetings that's going on, and
Right.
and I'm thinking about families that have sort of limited resources or physical environments where there's two meetings that are trying to take place at the same time in the same home.
Right.
There's just things that we're having to deal with, and I think it's important for leaders to recognize this and and to step out to make sure that I'm communicating with you. Now, again, from a communication standpoint, it's not that I'm speaking to you. I am listening to you to find out what your situation is, what is your circumstance, and I want you to tell me. And I think Jill already mentioned, I think that we have a responsibility to report up to our leaders. This is what we're dealing with. Here's what we're going on. Here's what I'm going to be wrestling with in the future. I think it's a key aspect of what we're trying.
And you know, Mike, honestly, in all fairness to a lot of leaders, if they don't have children at home, and if they aren't a single parent, they have no clue. And that's not I'm not being rude. I'm just saying, honestly, you have no idea what it's like for these parents with children at home, and they're trying to, you know, provide daycare and provide, you know, caregiving and all these things that normally somebody else does.
Mm-hmm.
And it is a monumental effort for someone to be able to do it all. And the expectation is incredible. And the employees, because these leaders aren't always privy to those kinds of circumstances and forget about how difficult, or don't think about how difficult each person's situation might be, then it really is important to be vulnerable. Like we said, Brene Brown says that's the new courage. We need to all, you know, come forward and risk that vulnerability of saying, this is my situation and this is what I need help with.
Right.
And when we have these impromptu meetings, it can create, you know, an incredible havoc. And I want to attend as many as I can, but I need to have advance notice, if at all possible.
I love what you're saying about vulnerability. I think it also has to, I'll flip it in the other direction, is that we have to be confident enough in being able to share with those that we work with as peers, as well as people that we report to. This is what I'm trying to reach this objective. This is what I'm running into. I think at this point in time that we have to over communicate that. I think it's critical. Oh, wrong way. It's important. There's 3 C's in here: check in, check on, and check out. And what I mean by that is that I think it's important each day. I've talked to a number of people over the course of the last week in preparing with this, is that I think leaders want to make sure that their people are okay. One of the first questions that's always asked is, anybody talk, are you okay? Are you okay? I think our leaders.
How's your family doing?
Yeah, I think our leaders want that.
Your family?
So I think it's just a small, simple, when check in and say, hey, I'm on the dial now. I'm here. I'm ready to go. It's not a matter of just putting in FaceTime anymore. It's letting people know that I am connected. I am on. The second C is check on, which is throughout the day, find somebody that is put on your heart to check on and see how they're doing. That you work with, not just on a social basis, but you check on somebody, because those little that we're having to. So we don't have physical connection to be engaged with each other anymore, but the engagement is the power behind every organization. We have to go to higher levels of stepping up and stepping out to help others be engaged. And so by simply checking on to see how people are doing is not seen as a distraction. It's seen as care. And right now, more than anything else, is people need to feel cared for.
Right.
And I interviewed David Nurse, who's the president of the NPA network, which consists of like 500 recruiting firms around the world. And it was ironic. I scheduled my interview with him back in the fall, October, November. And it just took place a couple of weeks ago. As a matter of fact, if you go to my website, you can actually listen to the entire podcast that we had. We discussed
well, and that's such a good point, Mike, because right now, when you hear all the news and there's so many cases of, this coronavirus and they escalate every day, if you're not checking in and you go dark, then people are worried, and it heightens that anxiety that something's wrong with you, that something has happened. And that, we don't need that kind of added anxiety unnecessarily.
You betcha.
So I think that's so important.
Yeah. So you want to check and let people know that you're okay. You want to check out and don't go dark. And you want to check on, because one of the battles we fight with right now, we are fighting isolation. Yeah. That's what we're wrestling with. Jill had talked earlier about the importance of managing up. We want to over communicate. We need to know, you need to know what your boss is dealing with. There's really tough decisions that are taking place right now. Your bosses are wrestling with lots of difficult situations and circumstances. Your bosses are dealing.
Mike, I look at that as being murky water and a lot of fog.
Yeah, I love that. Murky water and a lot of fog. Because there's a lot of financial weight that the leaders of organizations are trying to manage right now, trying to navigate. And what happens is the way that you interact with your boss and your fellow coworkers in this environment, and for the next few weeks, months that we're dealing with as we go through this transitionary period, because it is a transitionary period. Things are not going to stay the same as they are now. It's going to have a new course it's going to take, and the new course is going to be positive. The challenge we have is that the way that you deal with those situations and circumstances that are thrown at you is going to put a huge mark on how you are remembered from this point forward. It's a key aspect of it. So you want to over communicate. You want to look at the family. You want to compare your daily schedules. You want to compare your daily schedules. And I love that, Jill, I was talking about this, and I told her the other day I was going into a meeting. I had to get off the phone because I had a scheduled appointment. She laughed and she goes, "Did you write that on the refrigerator so Tommy, my wife, knew that?" And I went, "No, I didn't. I just told her about it." And so I'm getting to a point now, I'm reporting to her every day, saying, here's my schedule for the day. I need to go to one level above that. I need to write this down and say, here's my appointments. Here's what I've got going on. And I think it's an important aspect of it. And the other part of it has to do with, you need to go and talk to your family and give everybody to give each other permission to tell you that I can't take a break now. Yeah. And it doesn't mean that I don't care for you. I don't love you. I'm not concerned about you. Give everybody the right to make that statement. It's a key aspect of it. This is one of the, and again, as I said earlier, unless blood is spurting. That's one of my favorite phrases in raising my daughter. I want to talk about productivity, because to increase productivity, Jill, you've spent a lot of time talking about it's important right now to adjust expectations. What do you mean by that?
I think it's your own personal expectations, especially, I look at it from my standpoint. I've always had high expectations of myself and for those around me. And I have really had to readjust my expectations for myself. And because of that, I have difficulty. There's so much going on that it's overwhelming. And when you get overwhelmed, your productivity just plummets. So keeping focused, I think, is one of the biggest issues that we have to deal with right now. And managing your expectations to know that We are overwhelmed. We're dealing in, murky waters and a lot of fog. And if we can focus and have 3 things that we're going to accomplish at some point during the day, during our work day that we've scheduled, then, hallelujah, that's great. If you get 3, if you get 1, I'd say pat yourself on the back until you get in a pattern of developing this routine and feeling like you have established some sense of control over your own day, even if there's not control over what's happening in the world.
Yeah, it's huge. And so what Jill's point she's making here is that you have to attack what's most important first. There's never been a time that this is more important, especially when you go into a home office scenario, because you're going to have distractions that are going to pop up. Just like right now, as I'm doing this, I'm looking at my computer's in front of the window, and I've got people walking by going up and down, and my eyes go in that direction. But the same thing happens whenever the kids run by, or the dog barks, or something comes up, or our spouse comes in. We have different, or there's an email that comes in that catches your eye. You got to attack what's most important first. Jill talks about, Jill, the slide I have is says choose 5 things. She's maybe more focused. She says 3, whether it's 3 or 5, but put on that flip chart I talked about earlier, write down those 3 to 5 things that are most important, that I'm going to do these things. And then at the end of the day, tear off and get you another page and do something differently with it.
Yeah, and I will be real honest here. I'm going to pull the vulnerability card. I'm really happy if I'm getting 3 things done, but I will be real honest with you. Depending upon the day, I could carry 2 over to the next day.
Right.
And so my expectations of myself have been dramatically reduced. And I will also say that I quit beating myself up about it.
Mm.
So that's why I'm picking 3 most important things and quit beating myself up about it. Be proud that I'm getting 3 things done.
You betcha, because what she's talking about there on the slide, what it says is see the ball moving and celebrate the ball moving. You've got to celebrate those steps that you take every day, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to create your own energy. What happens is you would go to an office and you would go into the office environment, and just walking into the office, there was an energy that's created just by being in the office, and you didn't do anything to contribute to it until you got there. And then when you got there, then you added to the energy. But but there's an energy that comes. You don't have that anymore. When you get out of bed and you go to wherever your home office is now, you are the only source of energy that's going to be driven. Now, one of the things that you can do is you can tell somebody you're going to do something and you're going to get it done by when. That's a way of creating your own energy.
And Mike, that's why I'm choosing 3 and not 5.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to depress myself.
Yeah. It's whatever target that you're shooting for with that. Tell somebody you're going to do something and get it done by when. That's a way of being able to push things out. One of the clients I work with, done both training as well as consulting, Josh Beasley with MK. I love watching this guy in action, because it's like what he does is at the end of a meeting, he will go pull the agenda together, and here are the action steps, and here are the action steps, and we're going to get these things done by a certain point in time. And it's always chronicled that way. It's always like, it's very clear. Here are the 3 steps. Here's the action steps. Here's the time frame that you're going to do with it. And you know what's so cool is that, do we hit it every single time? The answer is no. But movement always takes place after something that he launches that way. It's phenomenal watching that in action.
And Mike, I want to add one other thing. When I first started working from home and I started running my own business, I had an incredible accountability partner, and that was my husband. And my husband is still a great guy and a great accountability partner.
Yeah, he's still your husband too, by the way. I want to put that in.
He's still my husband. But for the first 2 years, especially the first year, every day he would ask me, "What did you do today? What did I do in terms of activities? What did I get done? What did I accomplish?" And he really was looking for me to say 3 big things. And I got in the habit of being able to, okay, when he gets home, he's going to be asking me, what did I accomplish today?
Mm.
And having that productivity accountability partner is key,
Yeah.
because it does keep you more focused. And, okay, I've got to have something that I've done today.
Yeah.
so that I can share with someone else.
That's huge. And if you don't have somebody, for those of you working by yourself, is to have somebody that you're connecting with on a social basis. I have Scott Cooksey, who's up in Oklahoma. He and I talk every Monday morning at 7:45. And we talk about what are the things we're going to be doing this week. And then we celebrate what are the things we did last week. It's having that person that's in our life. I want to talk just briefly about virtual meetings. We talked about making sure that as we interact with each other, you want to always have an agenda in advance. You want to have a start and end time to a virtual meeting, because sometimes, since it's virtual, it's like this thing, I'm pushing hard against the clock, because Jill and I are having a lot of fun talking about this stuff, and we're throwing stuff out we didn't plan on. But I got a hard stop here in 7 minutes. So start time and end time, but it's always, you want to start on the human side in the day's time, no matter what the meeting is. I think it's really important that the end of our day is no longer just putting down, just stopping and turning things off and walking away. You have to schedule time intensely with intention to do end of the day planning. You need to really be thinking about, what am I going to do tomorrow? There's, from a strategic standpoint, there's with the environment we're dealing with, we have to think about, what do I want to get accomplished tomorrow? And to be able to look at those time blocks, and to be able to look at things in micro sections. Look at your day, because you don't have an 8-hour day. You literally can work now that your office is in your home, 24 hours a day, and you can do it 365. I mean, so you have to learn how to squeeze time down, and to be able to look at it within an hour period of time, from 8 to 9. What do I want to get done? And then look at that and say, by that time, I want to get this accomplished. And to be able to have the clock drive you in small sections. And by doing so.
And Mike, that's where laser focus becomes really important.
Yes, very much so.
Really laser focused.
It's huge in that area. Now, the other thing when it comes to planning standpoint is that you got to take care of yourself physically. In today's time, here's the trap I find myself falling into, is I will find myself at my desk, and 3 hours will have gone by, and I will not have gotten out of my chair, because it just goes. I don't have, for those of you who this is the first time that you're dealing with that, because when you're in the office, you have these walk-by meetings. You get up, you go to the copy machine, you go to another meeting, you want to see somebody. There's physical movement that is just a natural course of the day. That's not the case anymore. And so you've got to do some things to create, you have to take care of yourself physically. There's a lot that's being written right now about the importance of taking care of yourself physically by getting out of your house with a social distance from others and walking down your street, and getting out and walking, and to stretch, to be able to, you have to do some things to be able to pour back into yourself. It's a critical aspect of being able to work from home. It's one of the great challenges I find. I don't do as good of a job in this area as I can, because I get so focused on what I'm trying to, hyper-focus Jill talks about, is I'm trying to build in more things where I go out first thing in the morning and I take a walk before I get started. When I finish this, I have a 2 o'clock call. You can be my accountability partners. I have to go and take a walk between now and my 2 o'clock call to come and flush this adrenaline out of me that's been just coursing through my body. You got to put some things in place. You have an opportunity. I was talking to a client that was telling me that he and his wife are working from home for the first time at the same time, and they are now at lunchtime taking an hour walk together, because they never had that ability to do so in the middle of the day. And so they're walking and talking every day at lunchtime. There's to be able to plan, to think of what can you do physically to take better care of yourself. Now, there's something Jill and I were talking, when I asked her to do this, she said, Mike, there's something I'd like for us to be able to offer. And that for anyone who is on any company that has somebody on the call, there's, because of the work that we do together in leadership development, there is an assessment and a profile that talks about our ability and how do we approach managing time. It's called Time Mastery. And Jill, do you want to take a minute and just tell them a little bit about that?
Sure. There are some patterns of behavior that we get into, and if you're aware of them at the very beginning, before you really start developing routines and working from home or working at home, the Time Mastery Assessment will identify 12 different areas for how you can manage your time more effectively. And particularly now, because it is so up in the air in terms of how you're managing your time, if you're like me, trying to get more control over some of those things that could be distractions or could be things that I'm procrastinating doing because I am not focusing on my highest priorities. This time mastery assessment will identify those for you, your trouble spots, as well as your areas of strength. And it will help you by giving you some tips and some ideas to provide you some ideas for how to gain more control over your time.
That's super.
Which are all habits.
All built. It talks about our natural wiring and what we have to do and the sort of the way that we've developed. And here's the neat thing about this: is any company that's participating in this is that the Jill Hickman Company is giving me the ability to authorize you can get one free assessment, one of these assessments per company. And so afterwards, if you will send me an email, again, it's one per company. But you can select somebody in the organization that might want to participate in this. Send me an email, and once you schedule a time for me to meet with me afterwards in the form of a debrief, we'll line up a time to take the assessment. We've got our calendars together on that. So Jill, thank you for helping us with this.
Yeah.
It's a great tool. I'm going to close with this. There's nothing better for us to focus on when working from home than mental focus. Jill talked about having a laser focus, talked about forward thinking focus. Man, is that so hard to do in today's time. Here's the thing that you have to, I was on a call with somebody earlier and we're talking about the importance of filling our brain up right now because there's so much that's just sucking it out as we try to battle with just the sense of uncertainty that's going on. It takes huge mental weight. It flushes energy out of us. And so there's a mental battle that we're constantly dealing with. From a mental focus standpoint, if you have not done this already, to help you with mental focus is look at the news first thing in the morning, look at the news about 6 or 7 o'clock at night, and don't look at it between other than those times. I had to do this because I found myself watching this ticker going on all the time. And I found out that what was happening is it wasn't new news that was coming at me, it was regurgitated information. And so what I've learned is that the challenge is being able to look at what's the news that's out there, find out what the facts are, not the opinions of the facts. Right? And then the second part of it is that just because of everything we have to deal with is fill your brain up with some positive reading and have a reading schedule right now that helps to replenish you and helps keep your mind focused in the right direction of what the possibility in life is, not the potential carnage we're afraid we might face. We will get through this period of time in some form or fashion. We'll get through this period of time. Now, there's things I've got. There's a book that I'm in my third reading on. I've got it here. That's an example. You can get this on Rob Pennington's website. It's called The Upside of Downtimes. It's a cool book. Jill and I know Rob. His life has been filled with a number of things, which is like helping his wife journey the battle of multiple sclerosis until she passed away after fighting it for like 15 years. That he was shot in the chest like 5 feet away and lived. And there's a huge story behind it. And he's got this awesome book. Get something written by the Navy SEALs. Find somebody who is speaking about in words of encouragement this now. If we have not connected on LinkedIn yet, please reach out to me. I'd love to connect our networks and come together. And if there's anything I can do to help you on a one-on-one basis, also reach out to me on that. That's what I feel my calling is and what I'm trying to do. There's some group things that are going to be coming up in April. I'm going to be launching a 3-part webinar series that helps us all sharpen our saw in today's time. One is 7 steps to recruit in a turbulent market. The second, myself and Mason Diaz, who is a technology and branding wizard, is going to talk about how to use LinkedIn and Facebook to maximize your reach right now. And then I'm going to come back and talk about power presentations when you're presenting candidates to clients for the jobs. How do you get them to move whenever there's to create action to be able to move forward to the next step? Now, I looked at this, kept trying to think, these would normally be roughly about $95 per seat per webinar. I'm doing this because most people are not in the office to be able to share this. So I've kind of cut this down. For $95. You can attend all 3 webinars. It's an offer I'm making to everybody who's on this workshop, as well as one I did on Monday, to try to make it cost effective. So I cut things down, trying to reach out to as many people as I can. So if that's something you're interested in, send me an email and ask about it. I'll also send an email out to everybody who's on the call today. So if you've got any help, I need your help in trying to get the word out along those lines. They'll be coming out starting April 21st, and be doing those every 2 weeks. Closing up on this, because we've now hit our time, we got to get out of here. The question that I've got for you is, what are people relying on you for? Working from my home, that's what drives me. Right now, today, what are people relying upon me for? And the second question is, how do you want to be remembered in this time? How do you want to be remembered as we move forward? I want to thank Jill for joining us today. This has been an important message. I've been watching my question board. There was no questions that have been launched on this. I'm going to end the share screen here so I can open some things up. Jill, do you have any closing comments that you want to make?
I just am thrilled to be on here today. And if we were able to offer anyone some practical tips or some hope for getting through this, which we all will, then I'm delighted to have been on here. And thank you for having me, Mike.
Super. That was a blessing to be able to play with you. And that's what was in our heart. We just wanted to be able to help people as you're going through this process. Reach out to me if you've got any questions after on a one-on-one basis. Happy to send me an email, or if you want to set up a time just to talk for a few minutes, be happy to talk to you. So I wish you all a great day, and God bless you.
Thanks, Mike.